Okay, so today we're going to use these wood planks that we were using last week, and I'm going to show you a way to procedurally generate variation with these planks. So the way that I have this set up is that the variation is being driven by object ID. So when I duplicate new boards, they're assigned new object IDs, and it will give me random variation for those boards. So you can see as I'm duplicating them down, it's creating new versions of each one with different level of paint color and different level of wear on each one. So I'm going to show you how I set that up. And this will infinitely continue to add more variation. Let's see if I duplicate it this many times and see what I get. Takes a minute here. Okay. All right, so for just starting out, we're just going to start with 5 boards. So let me delete out these. Okay, 6 boards. Let's play that. Okay, so we've got these 6 boards. So I'm going to kind of break down how I did that. All right, so if I open up my Hypershade, let's see, there we go. And let's do isolate select. So I'm going to start with a plank over here. And let me just get a selection here. Make it easier. Okay, so I've got isolate select on. Now let me hit plank and the isolate select. So this is the base plank material that I have selected. You can see this, just even the base plank is actually changing color per object ID. So if I look over here to the diffused CC switch, so what this is doing is it's taking this base diffuse color that I have, and I have 5 different color correction nodes. It's color correcting it. So if you can see here, it's a AI color correct, and I'm just shifting the values around for each one of these so that I have this color, and then a slightly desaturated one, and then a more yellow version that's a little bit brighter, and a darker version that's a bit greener, and then a kind of brown-green desaturated board. And they're all being mixed together into an AI switch. And what's driving this switch, so normally whenever you have, here, I'll just disconnect this. Normally when you have this switch, you move this index slider and it will just switch in between these inputs. So if I go to 0, it's going to go to input 0, which is diffuse CC1, and then 2, and then 1, and then 2, and 3, and 4, and so on. So it's going to just switch every single board to this type. Well, we don't want to do that. What we want to do is we actually want to drive it by something. So what I did was, now I need to make a shout out to Mads. Oh, forgive me. I don't know how to say this. I'll just say Mads. He helped me figure out how to do this because I was having a lot of trouble figuring out a way to get this done. So this is just the Arnold Answers forum. You can get all kinds of awesome feedback. Like if you have a really simple question or a really complicated question, you just post it on here and the community is really awesome. You'll probably get an answer pretty quickly. This, like, he answered me in a few hours with a video and with images. He was using 3D Studio Max, but the idea worked for me. So basically I was asking if I could drive my AI switch index via object ID, which is exactly what I did. So what I had to use was, let's pull this over here. The first thing was I had to make a AI utility node. So an AI utility node, and I had to set the shade mode to flat and the color mode to object ID. Okay. And then I made an AI random node. And for the AI random node, I set the type to color. And then I made an AI range node. And for the AI range, what this number needs to do, first let me hook these up. So I'll take the AI utility and I hook it up to input color. I take the out color from the random node and I put it into input. And then I take just a single channel, or you can do a luminance conversion, however you want to do it. And I took the R channel and I put it into the diffuse CC switch. And whenever you put it on this little yellow node here, it'll pull up your input selection. It's like kind of like the connection editor, but a little bit stripped down. And then I just input it into, and I left click on index, and that attaches that red channel to index. So now this object ID random range node is driving this switch. So what that does is when I play this, right now it's doing nothing. And the reason it actually is doing something, but the reason it doesn't look any different is because I need to increase this AI range. So right now, when it's at input max of 1, that means that it's only going to be using the very first input slot. So what I need to do is start increasing that number. So let me click on that, and then I'm going to lock so that I can click back over to this AI range node and it'll still go. All right, so now I'm going to start moving this input max up. And as that happens, you can see now there's 2 variations. And then as it goes to the second number, then there's 3. And 4. There we go. And if I go any higher than that, it's going to start turning black. Because it's basically, it's sampling nodes that are higher than the range of in my switch. So since I've only got 4 inputs here, actually 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, this AI range can only go up to 4. So somewhere in before 5. I know you can't see any black ones whenever I go above 5, but that's just because we're getting lucky. If I change the seed, which the seed, if I click on the AI random node, the seed is just randomly changes the orientation. So if I okay, so it looks like it's safe before it goes over 6. Before it goes over 5. Once it's over 5, then it'll start sampling black. Now if I do the seed, it should maybe give us, there we go. So just keep that in mind, that this number needs to be below what the maximum amount of inputs you have here. And say you want to influence more, say we want board 2 or input 2 to be the most sampled. What you can do is you can actually clamp the input min to be closer to 2. So let's say, yeah, so we're basically clamping this value to be the majority of the samples. So if I just duplicate this, let's see if we can get some more of those brown boards. Okay, there we go. So it's starting. It's just sampling, the majority is sampling the second input, or the third input rather, and then it's also bringing in some variation from some of the other inputs as well. So this is just like one way to kind of change. So if I went to that this range node again, and I brought it back to 0, and then I start bringing this up to just before 5. Then it's going to have the entire range of boards in here. And if I start bringing this up, it's going to start going to the last input. So this is a clamping between 4 and 5, which is the last input we have. So if I start bringing it down, it'll start sampling other boards. And then if I bring it all the way down, it'll sample all of them. Okay, so that's the idea. I know this looks pretty confusing. So what I'll do is, well, first I'll go through the painted versions as well. And then I'll actually show you how I built it from like the ground up, as just so we can clarify. So after I did the plank variation, I did the paint variation. So I made this color switch, which is the exact same workflow that we did before. Oh, let me turn off the lock, which is why that was not working. So I did the exact same thing I did before with my utility node, my random node, and my range node. Put it into an AI switch, and then I have 6 colors in here. So I just did the same thing. I started bringing up this output max value. Now I could actually bring this up much higher. So my daughter is at the door. Okay, so take this this object range. Hold on one second. Okay, so I start taking up this this output max, and it'll start increasing the variation just like we did before. And something that I did here is that I actually did a color correction after the fact. So let's see. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so I just had this like little lock on again. So I have my color switch here, which is just those 6 colors that are randomly generating. And then I did a color correct in front of that. And why I did that is that now I can globally change the color of all those boards, but they still maintain their value structure. And I can increase or decrease the saturation for all of them together. Or I could take the brightness down. It just gives the ability to add variation after the fact, so that you can, continually run these through. So let's see what I did down here. So for this, I actually duplicated my color switch and put it into an AI color corrector, desaturate it, and then put it into this roughness node. And it's probably very hard to see, but I'm actually I'm using it to drive the roughness. So it's very subtle, like to see visually, but it is actually changing the roughness of the paint boards. If I look at the direct specular, let me turn on 3D manipulation. And I bring this back over. I bring this down. As I bring this number up, so this is the paint roughness, I can kind of like get a range of roughness values. It's like a subtle offset because I didn't want it to be too crazy. Just so that each board is slightly different, just using the same information that I had to continually drive different parts of the breakout. Just in case you caught or missed how I did that, or the 3D manipulation thing, you can actually just activate that window of 3D manipulation so that you can actually tumble inside your IPR, which sometimes can be useful. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so then I have my final paint which obviously this is very overkill. You would not have like these wild degree of color and value changes in a board set. What you want to do is make them much closer together and more subtle, but I'm just trying to show you the principle, the reason to, or I guess to illustrate how this variation works. So you would want to do a much more subtle version of this in your final, but it just gives you just a look. So this is just a really simple dirt that I made. All right, so this next one is the paintware random switch. So what I did is I have this paint control list from my last video that is driving where the paint is being cut out and put in. So I did 3 different ranges. So I just did an AI range for all of them, and I started clamping them in different values. So I have the ragged version, the weathered version, and this clean paint version. So just 3 versions. And those are being driven by an AI random switch, just like we did before. So we have our paintware object ID, the paintware random, and then the paintware range node, which is just driving the amount of influence that those have. And then I'm just taking my paint node, which is already being randomized, and my wood plank node that is already being randomized as well, and I'm putting them into a wood paint mix material. So that's giving you that final result where it's randomizing every single board and its wood value. It's randomizing every board with its paint value. And then this is randomizing the amount of wear is being shown on each board. So like we have 3 levels of randomization, which really gives it a lot of range of detail. And this is, just for free. Once this thing is built, you can just go in and like, I could duplicate this board 1,000 times and you would have almost a different version of the board for every single board down the way. So another thing you could do is once this is built out like this, I could go in and change the color of the paint. And it's going to change the color for every board in the list, which is awesome. So say like they want it to be, your art director or whatever wants it to be red now and less saturated or something like that. You could just go in there and change it, and all 1,000 of those boards are instantly updated. And say it's like, oh, I don't want so many of those really worn boards. Or let's go back to this paint wood mix. I can go to my paintware range node and I can start dialing in this number so that I get less of, let's say we wanted the really worn boards only. So now it's almost all the worn boards. Or to say that I want to increase this value. I think the last value is I think 3 is the one that has the least amount of wear. So you can see now I have the very low amount of wear clamped to 2. So the third input, which is a value of 2, because it's 0, 1, 2. So the second input, or actually third input, but it's called input 2. It's a little confusing. So this value needs to be clamped to that 2. So if I start bringing this down to 1, then we're going to get input 1 and input 2. So we're going to get all the variation. Or we're going to get 2 of the variation boards. And then if I go back to 0, you're going to get all 3. So you can do that at every single level. Like you could just do the paintware like that. You could do just the paint color like that, or the paint or the plank color. Okay. So I kind of just showed you the concept behind it. Let me actually build it from scratch, just in case anybody was confused about how that was built. So I'm just going to do a very basic version of this. Okay, so I'm going to make a new tab. We'll call this a demo. I'm going to make a new AI standard node. And let's call this wood plank demo. And I'm going to attach this new material, wood plank demo. There it is. This should be a shiny whiteboard now. Okay, and I'm going to update the full scene so that it doesn't show displacement. Okay, there we go. All right, so just a shiny whiteboard. All right, if I go to that wood plank demo, let me turn down the specular just so we just have diffuse. Now what I want to do is let's make a constant, color constant. That way we can control, like, instead of just putting a color straight in here, we'll put it here so that we can modify this. So let's say we want like this sky blue color, something like that. Okay, so we have our first one. Let's say paint color 1. Okay, so let's duplicate this. So I'm just going to hit Control D, and it's going to duplicate. Let's duplicate 5 of them. And I'm just going to make a couple different versions. Actually, for illustrative purposes, let's make these very different. Let's make them like all different colors. So that there's no mistake what's going on. Okay. Ah, you kidding? Okay, that works. All right, so we have these 5 Easter color type things. All right, let's make an AI switch. So I'm making AI switch so that we can combine all these together. And you can just delete this shading group that the AI switch made because we're only using this to drive color. So I'm gonna take my AI switch and plug this straight into my base color. Move this back. And let's call this demo color switch. We'll take and just start plugging in each one of these out colors into an input. So now we have all 5 of these colors going to this switch that is now going into the base color final for that material. So what we should get is this blue color on all 6 of these boards. And then if I click on this AI switch here and I start moving this number, it should cycle in between those. So up to input 4, and then it'll turn black after that because there's no input there. So if you continue to put more inputs in there, you could go all the way up to 19, and then you could do another AI switch. You could have an infinite number of switches because you could connect a switch into a switch and, you know, make something ridiculous. You probably won't need to do that though. Okay, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have all those different colors. So let's make our object ID, and you don't have to drive this by object ID. That's just the way that I did it. I'm gonna delete that shading group. You could drive this by, there's a ton of different things you could do. I don't know how you would do it really. You'd have to go and figure out, you have to be, I mean, this is really open-ended. It's like Maya's built that way. It's built so that you can just kind of make whatever you want. And if you're into coding, you could even get crazier. So I'm just using the nodes that are provided. So in the shading mode for this, remember we have to set it to flat because flat color gives the entire board no shading and just a single solid color. So if I add this object ID utility straight into color, it's up here just so you can see what it's doing. All right, so I have it set to color flat. So this should be white. Okay, so what we want to do is set it to object ID. So now it's not driven by this color, it's driven by its object ID. So it's just going to give it a random color. And this is not the switch. This is just the, just so happen that the colors are similar, but it's not the switch. It's actually just giving you a color that represents this object ID. So it's just a number. It's like almost like a crypto mat, if you know what that is, something like that. Okay, so now I've got this utility node. Let's do demo object ID. Okay. So now let's make an AI random, and this is just going to be just going to give you a random seed. Right now, all those numbers are fixed, so it'll just keep keep pumping out that same number, like these same colors. But if I put this random in there, it's going to, oops, let me put it up here so you can see what it's doing. Straight into the color. It's going to randomize. First, I got to set up this node. So set the type to color, and there we go. Now it's doing it. So if I start changing this seed, now it's just going to start randomizing those integers. So you're just going to get a bunch of different results. So that's what it randomizes for. Okay, so now we've got the random, demo random. And to control what it's doing, to control the range, we need to make an AI range node. So we take the out color from the random node and put it into the input of that AI range. And we'll do demo color range. All right. All right, so it's not going to do anything because we needed to drive something else. So we've got the whole thing working. So now we need to take this out color red channel and put it into this yellow little dot here, and it'll pull up this menu, hit other, and then connect it to index. So now this is properly set up. So we're going to take this demo color switch, take the out color, put it into base color. Now it's just blue because remember we have to change the AI range. So I'll click on that demo color range, and then I'll start bringing this number up, and it'll start bringing in more variation. All right, I think up till 5, yeah. So it should be before 5, and then you won't get any black versions. So if input empty nodes. So if I start duplicating these, it's just going to continually randomize between those versions of the board that we had. So it's just a super useful tool to get you a lot of randomization quickly. And you can drive whatever functions you want in these things. So it's like really open-ended on, so like what I showed you earlier, I was randomizing the paint color, the wood color, and the amount of wear that was happening. So you could actually even do, you can input entire shaders into these AI switches. So say you want some, like you have a sphere and you want some of the spheres in your scene to be wood, some of them to be metal, some of them to be snow, some of them to be water, whatever. You could do the same thing. Just plug in entire shaders into here instead of colors. And then you could get this randomized material sets as well as color sets. Or just control signals as well. Like I was mixing control signals here in this one. Okay, so I'm gonna assign my original. Let's see, the wood paint mix, I think it is. All right, there we go. Now we have the final wood paint mix material that we had at the beginning. If I just change this color back, I think it was doesn't matter. But anyway, so you could even drive this final AI switch color and do like a bunch of different colors to those boards as well. So I just didn't do that. Okay, so that is pretty much it for this video. Just a really cool way to add a bunch of different variation. Like say you have a whole scene with a bunch of rocks in it, and you want each of the rocks to be a different shade or a different value or different color, or you want them to receive a different texture map, you can just use this method, this AI switch with this object ID, random, and range. All right, so I will see you in the next video.